Hello, you've caught me pretending to be caught by you while I'm pretending to read a book for the purposes of making it look like I could be learned. Of course, while I have a mastery of the written word, I cannot in fact read, which is why I like books to have pictures in them, so I too know what's going on. Why Rupert the Bear's The Big Game Hunt isn't on the list of literary classics is beyond me, with its 24 lavish illustrations of a culturally insensitive and historically racist lily-white bear. I had a Rupert the Bear teddy bear growing up. I loved that racist bear with his proclamations on how indigenous people should be depicted in his comic strip. But then I learned the hard lesson about Rupert the Bear. It's okay to be vaguely racist if you have good but misguided intentions and aim that squarely at young children, but the line should be drawn at the yellow trousers with a grid design on them coupled with a red top. What kind of message does that send to young people? Not good. I want to sing the theme tune now, but I'm not going to do that because by the time I actually sit down to record this script, I'll feel otherwise. I'll probably be feeling like, oh, fuck me. I wish this could just be magically produced without me having to do anything beyond write it. Anyway, welcome to the show. I hope you're feeling at home. So what's this episode about? It's not about books if that's what you're thinking. Anyways, I'm going to try out a new segment as we've gone a minute without anything real happening. So here is Book Corner. Capital Realism by Mark Fisher. Basically, in this book, he says it's easier to imagine the end of the world than it is for us to imagine the end of capitalism. That's basically it. That's the book. I don't know, Mark. I'm a pretty imaginative guy. But let's dig into it. Ah yes, 5.5 inches wide by 8.5 inches in length. And where's the rest of it? Anyway, needless to say, it's more of a pamphlet than a book. He quotes Zizek a lot in it. I don't have any thoughts on Zizek. And that's basically it. Capital Realism by Mark Fisher. I'm not one of those comedians who will do a routine about the books they forced us to read in school against our will like complete and utter bastards. That, I suspect, has been done by some more popular yet somehow lesser comedian. What I'm going to do is a bit different. I'm going to bitch and moan about the crappy books they didn't make us read at school, but instead foisted the books denied us upon a different demographic. See, in Britain, land of chips and curry sauce, probably, it's been a while since I've been, but in Britain when you say, oh yeah, I went to public school, you're saying it wrong, because it should be, oh yes, I went to public school. This is because public school in Britain actually means private school, sometimes also referred to as grammar school, after the famous actor who played Fraser Crane. What is the curriculum in private school? Why? The classics, of course. The Odyssey, the egg and spoon race. Ah, they had that in my school, Mr. So-called air quotes supposed comedy man. Yes, but your school didn't have solid silver spoons as made by Mappin and Webb, founded in the 1700s and still making spoons today. So what do they have on the curriculum in public school? The classics we've established, you know. The Iliad, the sack race with the sack made of gold flax, and fucking a dead pig, or, to put it in the King's English, having sexual congress with the deceased porcine like a British Prime Minister did, and not just fictionally. There's a classics class divide, dear viewer. They get they. Who's they? Cunts, that's who. Posh, tops, received pronunciation, silver spoon knobs, the ruling class, classless arses, upper crust and upwardly mobile twits. That's who they. And they get the Odyssey in the toppy-nosed school. What do we get in the comprehensive? So-called because they're comprehensively shit. But what did we get? Jason and the Golden Fleece. A B-movie in Greek literature, and if not in literature, then certainly in celluloid. The classic class divide in the classroom, dear viewer. They get Dante's Inferno in the upper crust school, and what do we get in the comprehensive? Kes, a story about how grim it is to be a bullied boy in ownership of a kestrel in the north of England. Spoilers, the bird is murdered. The classic class divide in the cleaved classrooms, dear viewer. They get to enjoy Don Quixote in the posh school, and what do we get in the comprehensive? That's right, Mr. Imagination from the Mr. Men series, as written and illustrated by Roger Hargreaves. There is no Mr. Imagination, Mr. supposedly air-quoting comic strip man. That's right, dear viewer. Not only is there no Mr. Imagination, oh the irony, but I also really don't know what they're reading and when they're reading it in the private schools. Most knobs have at least a rudimentary knowledge of the classics, though I shouldn't tar all the ignorant tops with one brush. I should use 2 brushes, one for each hand. You might be sensing a little antipathy toward my supposed betters. It's 'cause I'm jealous of all their success that was handed to them on a silver platter. I'm a small, venal, petty man, green with envy, which I'm trying to grow up the side of the house for aesthetic reasons. I don't hate all the upper and middle class. I'd spare comedian and actor Miranda Hart the firing squad. I'm a nice guy. I'd be merciful for Miranda. No mercy for Jack, lovely, lovely blood money, Whitehall, though. I'd be like Ming the Merciless with my inhuman decree. Or, you know, like a Saudi royal. This time we're reviewing quick and easy recipes, entrees, food writers' favourites. Not much in the way of characterisation, but let's try it out. Oh god, tastes like shit. I wonder if the ancient Greeks would find it incredible that their tapestry of heroic soap operas would form the backbone of bedtime stories that get read at the British civil service when it's time for them to sleep under their desks. And the thing with these stories, the so-called classics, is that if we conveniently ignore all philosophical aspects, they aren't actually useful for anything beyond entertainment. What life lesson is there in Virgil's Aeneid that you can't find in Aesop's fables? I'm not a reader, I'm not a literary sort of person, because I've tried enjoying some of the classics, not the classical classics, just the regular classics, you know, Shakespeare, Chaucer, Richard Osman. For me, they all have the same in common. Boring as fuck, but admittedly, Shakespeare does have some quotables. Cry havoc and let slip the dogs of war. Woof! That, of course, was my impression of Betty White in her performance on Broadway when she played Othello, aka Reversi. Is my ignorance of Shakespeare feigned, or do you think it's genuine? And does it actually matter? Patrick Stewart would hate me for my outlook on the bard, but he's not a captain anymore, so I don't give a toss. So I didn't bother trying to enjoy the classics. I just read whatever I found to be interesting. When I was a kid, I read all the popular stuff. Stephen King, whose writing style reminds me of the movie Maximum Overdrive. Dean Koontz, with his Catholic apologia and urgent desire to be taken more seriously. Stephen Donaldson, Greg Bear, H.P. Lovecraft, and what's his name? Oh yeah, James Herbert. I've talked about him before. But the child must put aside childish things. Not Sooty, not him. Or a Dinky Toys die-cast metal replica of the Eagle from Space 1999. Not that. I'm not putting those childish things away. But a child must leave behind childish things and read proper books, you know, like what grown-ups read. Books without pictures that fully expect you to do all the hard work of visualizing the scene, which is hugely unfair for people with aphantasia, I would imagine. I don't actually enjoy many authors, if I'm honest. I like Ian Banks, J.G. Ballard, and Solzhenitsyn, or, as I call him, Boris. You may have noticed that as well as all beginning with B, they're all also dead. Fortunately, I hadn't got to new material they'd published while still living, so I stopped reading them when they turned their toes up. I never wanted the experience of new prose by them to be something to be looked back upon, but something to be looked forward to. Death kinda puts the kibosh on new material, unless you're George Carlin. There's a handful of Ian Banks novels, a couple of Ballard tomes. One is a collection of short stories, which might have stories I missed before, but then I had no such moratorium on Solzhenitsyn as I'm currently reading Cancer Ward, which I only read in doctors' waiting rooms. Alright, other waiting rooms too, but it's funny when it's at the local doctor's. Over 10 years I've been reading that. It's a good book, like a little Russian version of Holby City crossed with EastEnders. Plus, there might be some biting criticism of Soviet healthcare under the oppression of totalitarianism, but mostly it's overly thoughtful Russians arguing about who is getting one over on the other. Cancer Ward is a journey rather than a destination, like Infinity or the opening titles to Star Trek Voyager, but a lot less boring. You'd think I'd be the sort of person up to their eyeballs with sci-fi or fantasy novels with spaceships and dragons and elves, or perhaps horror novels full of ghosties, ghoulies, or Google's AI. Nope, I'm rereading Watership Down and enjoying the lush description of the fauna and flora of the English countryside as seen through the eyes of some rabbits. I read more than one book at a time, just in case you're wondering. I'm not a reader though, don't get the idea I'm some kind of bookworm. I might read a chapter of something I'm reading, but it might be 3 months before I even pick up a book again. Not that there's anything wrong with reading. I like reading an entertaining book. I expect if I had some Ian Banks book I hadn't read, I'd probably read it in 1 or 2 sittings. Feast or famine, innit? Sad violin, please. See that? That's power, that. Oh, actually, it's just post-production. I get those two things confused. But, dear viewer, I have reached an age, well, I suppose we all have. I have reached my final stretch in life, and so it has come to pass that I should go ahead and order those books unread. I'll devour the Banks, the Ballard, but take heart, I'm planning to reread A Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich, and given the speed I read Solzhenitsyn, it should mean I'll be finished sometime in my late 90s. That's all for this episode. You can tell because I said, and they lived happily ever after. Yeah, I said it just then. Thanks for watching. Good night.